everyone. Welcome to today's panel discussion on fostering effective internal investigations and addressing the challenges behind it within organizations. So, internal investigations play a crucial role in maintaining transparency, integrity, and trust within an organization. However, several challenges can impede the fairness and thoroughness of these investigations, ranging from internal dynamics and conscious biases to time constraints and inadequate policies also. So, in today's panel discussion, we will be exploring strategies to mitigate these challenges and promote unbiased decision making while also addressing the need for effective time management, transparency, and robust policies. So, join us as we uncover the key measures organizations can implement to enhance the effectiveness and credibility of their internal investigation process. For this panel discussion, we have experts with us. We have Jahnavi Upadhyay, she's Corporate Investigation Counsel at Accenture, and Ranju Goyal, she's General Counsel at Stanza Living. Welcome, both of you. So starting with my first question to you, Jahnavi. Internal dynamics and biases can sometimes skew the outcome of an investigation. So, how organizations can help in creating a culture of impartiality and ensure that investigations are not influenced by internal dynamics? And also, what measures can be taken to minimize the impact of bias and promote unbiased decision making during the whole process?
Avani, in this, the best way of going about it is that organizations, when they're setting up separate teams for investigation, so it's a function which is sometimes taken up by HR, sometimes by employee relations, but which is a very fair way of conducting an investigation. But at the same time, now organizations are definitely understanding that there is an employee sentiment which also kicks in, right? If the confidentiality is not maintained, if there are biases, so the entire the investigations actually depend on confidentiality, Avni. So how would you actually ensure confidentiality? Because confidentiality is essence of any investigation, right? If you lose confidentiality anywhere, you will have very negative sentiment coming in from the employees. Now, how do we do that? As you rightly asked, separate teams which cannot be influenced by these internal dynamics and biases have to be set up. While the investigations are done by a lot of HR and employee relations employees, there are also independent teams which can be created by the organization, which will only report to the leadership, right? And at the same time, the investigation details, although it is also covered by Section 126 of Evidence Act, confidentiality there, the privilege comes under that. So it is also meant to be maintained that the entire plethora of the investigation, the entire finding, the proceedings, everything has to be kept confidential, and the eyes which see that has to be very, very, very limited. Right? If you can maintain that, I think a lot of biases which are there, which are also unconscious biases, right? Suddenly, if suppose I am the lead and one of my juniors get implicated into something, whether the matter is eventually substantiated or unsubstantiated, somewhere without even realizing, something might come in me that I'll try and protect that particular person. So that level of confidentiality has to be maintained. You will have to maintain confidentiality from your HR partners also. So these independent bodies, when they are created and when they are externally doing a 360-degree review, they will ensure that these sort of biases don't kick in, and then your the confidentiality is maintained. Now there is one more thing.
Better to have an impartial team. So instead of that having the reporting manager, the organization can look at having impartial teams or impartial.
Yeah. So, what happens is when there is a concern against a very senior member in the organizations, now what is also adopted is that external counsels are involved, because that is where you actually see that, that bias or that sentiment kicks in, which might not lead to a positive result. So it's better to have external counsels also involved at that stage or at that level, when you see any ethical issue or any sexual harassment issue, um, or any other code of conduct violation or any policy violation that an organization may have faced. In India, there is no law per se which covers, or any legislation which covers internal investigations. So companies have to a lot rely upon their own policies. The policies have to be crafted and then vetted by your external counsels as well, right? So they can also add in and pitch in, and they can have that impartial eyes on the records or the policies which have been created, the drafts which have been created.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jahnavi, with us. And as Ranju, you said a point on transparency. I'm going to come on my second question regarding that only. So time constraints and lack of transparency can erode trust in internal investigations. So how can investigation teams effectively manage their time to ensure a comprehensive investigation while meeting organizational expectations? And my second question is, how can organization enhance transparency, which you talked about earlier, throughout the process while also respecting the need for confidentiality?
So, time remains most important element in conducting an investigation. So the expectation always remains whenever an incident is reported to the investigating team. The expectation is it should be done in a jiffy. And the people would keep inquiring, is the investigation over? Is it done? So one has to, and it puts the investigating team also under pressure. So it is important to manage time. At the same time, we have to maintain the comprehensiveness and trustworthiness of the entire process. So to have that, it is very important to strategize the entire investigation process so that you are able to deliver and meet the deadline. So if an investigation just goes on and on and on, so like any other, like we hear it in media, or if so then it never came to an end, or it never reported. So it has to be in a time bound manner, of course, but at the same time it should not be rushed so that we lose any important or any key aspect of any investigation. So it is important to have that strategy in place when to the investigating team, which goes with a clear mind what is to be done. And to achieve that, the most important thing which I think the team must do is to have defined or establish clear objectives, which would have the scope, the purpose, and the expected outcome. So it enables the team to stay focused and also removes any unnecessary diversion. So when the team knows that they have the scope in with them, they know the purpose and what is the desired and what is the expectation, they would remain focused and will not stretch the investigation and make it too lengthy, or it might not, and at the same time it should not skip any important critical or important clue which is required in the investigation. So it is all about findings and fitting the puzzles when you when you are interviewing, when you are analyzing the data. You need to extract a lot of information. So but then the team has to be very clear that this is a time bound process, otherwise it will lose its essence or importance. The second important thing which the team must do is to or the lead in the investigating team member must also have a structured plan. And the structured plan would need to have steps defined, timelines defined, and the resources to be allocated also defined, so that it goes in a seamless manner. And this would also, and every the plan should have specific milestones and the deadlines for each stage, because at the end we have to meet the deadline also. As I said, time is always crucial in any investigation. It cannot go on and on, because the management would lose patience, the complainant would also lose patience, and it would also lead to erosion of evidence. So to protect that, it has to, I think, time remains very critical, and it must be, the conclusion must come within time. Another thing is to allocate resources. I think we need to have proper technology, the appropriate kind of personnel with the required skill sets. We also would need to prioritize the tasks. So once you have your scope, you have defined your scope, the purpose, then you have to have your structured plan. You have also allocated resources. The next thing is to prioritize tasks. So the entire team may be given the entire team must be given management segments, which has to be divided responsibilities. The task has to be prioritized so that you do not miss and it does not get overstretched also. So what is important and which has to be taken first and which step has to be taken first should be clear between the teams. So this is it, I think, on the strategies which would help if you keep all these in mind. I think the time lines and the milestones which has been set up for the team can be met.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And as you shared about data protection, what are some of the new laws that, like the internal investigations teams have to keep in mind now, which were not done previously? Like data protection, like bill came, it's amended. So are there any new laws?
A lot of things in investigation, like people would take the call recordings, WhatsApp chats. So these are like privacy policies which has to be seen and understood. So and there is a way. So if there is want to have a call recording of a person, so then you have to apply proper channel. You have to file a complaint or try to at least intimate the police. Now you have to involve some external agency, and that too under confidentiality. So that has to be managed. If not, then you have to also like take that person in confidence, because when you're interviewing a person, you have to be very sensitive to that, to the person's emotions, because if there and on their privacy, otherwise that can go like in a wrong direction. So we have to be very careful on that. Also like when so force, at times what happens, the investigating team starts thinking that they have all the authorities to do whatever they can, because they have been empowered by the management to investigate. But then they have to not think that way. They have to be very sensitive, and the approach has to be very, very I will not say it can be friendly, but it has to be appropriate, so that nobody is offended. At the same time, confidentiality is maintained, transparency is maintained, and integrity is maintained.
Empathy is something which is crucial to any investigation. I mean, if you're not empathetic, so sympathy and empathy are two very different things, right? If you're sympathetic, probably you'll not be able to do an unbiased investigation. But being empathetic to a person, I think that is extremely crucial. That is understanding, and you're maintaining your tone, being nice to person, even when you know that that person is involved in some wrong. I mean, that's crucial, right? You can't treat a reporting party, a witness, or a subject in different manners. It has to be equal treatment. That has to be maintained.
But it makes me question, like if somebody, I mean, I don't know a lot about internal investigation, but if somebody deny to do, an interview, like they don't want to be part of it. So, like, how do you make sure that you're doing it properly?
The tact and skill which the investigating member has to like manage. So the person has to be given confidence that even if whatever they say, or that can be taken as anonymous, or maybe their identity will be protected, because when people are divulging something about in an investigation process, they are always like they are under fear that something can be misquoted, or maybe their job can be at risk. That therefore they will refrain from giving complete facts and information. So it is that skill of the investigating officer or the investigating team member to give that confidence in that person. So they have to come up with truth, to speak truth and give complete facts and figures. If there is half information, that also like tosses the entire investigation process. It goes for a toss.
Yeah.
So this has to be managed. And at the same time, when you spoke of transparency, when you were questioning how do we maintain transparency, I think, and this goes with the timeline challenge which we have, which I spoke earlier. So while we are maintaining that timeline, we also have to keep giving an update to the maybe to the management or the HR that something is in progress. Otherwise, they think that you're not acting on it. So while we are maintaining the confidentiality and integrity, and without divulging much about this, at least the key highlights or the main highlights can be given. The progress in a nutshell manner can be always communicated to the management, so that they have faith that the investigation is going on in a smooth manner, and there would be like positive conclusion to this, or in time.
Yeah, I think that's very important. The transparency and the time management both. So
yeah,
and
it's a high stress job. As an investigator, being an investigator is a high stress profile.
Yeah, I
You're
mean,
against time, and your job is it is dependent on a lot of people, their availability, data availability. You have to go prepared in an interview. You know, you cannot go with a half-baked information that was given to you. Whatever information is also coming to you has to be verified. So you just cannot walk in. So, you know, there's a lot of preparation that goes in before you go and interview someone and request them for artifacts. And as and when people refuse, you know, we try and convince them over emails or chats. If they're still not convinced, we request the HRs that can you please help us and give the comfort to this person, and they are crucial for our investigation. Can you bring them on board?
yeah.
So we do that.
But confidence has to be given to the people who who is refusing.
It's a lot about sentiments of people. End of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot goes behind, conducting just one interview in an interview.
Yes, it does. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And, it takes me to my next question, because, for all this, company policies are very important, as you both talked about earlier. So, Jahnavi, my next question is to you, that inadequate company policies can hinder these processes. So, what steps can organization take to develop some robust policies that support effective internal investigations throughout?
So, I mean, creating policies is an outcome not only of law. I mean, they are not only dependent on laws, but also of experience of an organization. And it is a ongoing process. When any organization faces a difficulty, they realize that they have to also build policy there, right? So it's building a policy is an ongoing process. Still, I would name some things like sexual harassment policy. Like India is blessed to have posh prevention of sexual harassment in the workplace 2016 Act. But a lot of countries do not have that, right? So policies about your sexual harassment, your whistleblower policies, then as I told you, then you have to then have trainings on those policies in accordance. So it's an ongoing process. Ethics and ethics policies. What are your policies around ethics? Anti-bribery and a lot of policies. Like the challenge is, when you say code of conduct, it does not only involve the way you behave, but you talk, how you're carrying yourself in the meetings, your dress code and everything. Then your ethic policies, it has a very wide meaning, right? Your financials.
So it could be
A financial
embezzlement or corruption.
Yeah, embezzlements and misappropriation of funds. And any employee who has breached or has probably committed any other fraud, which may fall under the category of presenting false bills or something like that. And you will be surprised, Avni, to know that when these fake bills are submitted in the organizations, they sometimes run into lakhs. There are a lot bigger. It's not a smaller picture. It's a when you look at the larger picture, and in the projects, these kind of things happen.
So, like as you both were talking about, like many things have to be kept in mind while creating policies. Do you both think that if there is a separate law for this particular thing, it will help the process even more?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
If there is a legislation which can support the internal investigations, like there is so it's bits and pieces scattered everywhere, right? We rely on multiple acts right now to sustain through our investigation. So how do you do an investigation? First thing is that you received a concern. It can be sexual harassment, it can be your workplace harassment, it can be disrespectful behavior, it could be embezzlement, it could be false bills of any kind submitted apart from the quoted. So, even if sometimes, things like physical assault is also reported in offices, right? That also becomes. So suddenly you have Department of Police also coming in between. It's not just that, there was a posh concern which will be dealt in a quasi-judicial manner, but there is also now a physical assault which has happened, probably between two people, three people, four people. It can vary. So, you have to have if there could be something that we could create as a legislation and which could address to all the issues which are on the grounds and which organizations are facing as a difficulty, if that could be addressed, I think that would be very wise of the government to do.
Yeah, and it will further help the process as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, thank you for sharing that, Jahnavi. Coming to my last question, which is to you, Ranju. It's about insufficient training and how it can hinder the effectiveness of the process. So, what training and development initiatives can organizations implement to equip their teams with the necessary skills and knowledge? And also, what practices and systems can be implemented to improve documentation and ensure the proper retention of these records, investigative records?
It's a very important question. So it is not only the task does not finish only by just doing an investigation and submitting the report. It is also important to preserve those records for future references. So, like if there is another instance in future, so that the same can be associated, but we should have proper documentation and record keeping of that. So it is very important to train the investigating team with the best techniques and practices, which at the time of evidence gathering, interviewing, and data analysis and report writing. After that, then and at the same time, we spoke that we also need to have to keep the legal complications and regulatory processes in our mind when we do it. So, Abdi, it is very important to employ the trained people for doing any investigation, because this being a very sensitive matter, it cannot be given to anybody and everybody. The team the investigating member in the investigating team has to be chosen very carefully, and the person should have required skills, and also since this being a very sensitive, and when it comes to like leadership, questioning to the leadership or the team below, and to balance the emotions also. So one has to, the investigating team member has to have, as we Jahnavi already said, is sympathy and empathy has to go along in the entire process. So it is also about the team must not only be trained to interview, they must also be trained equally how to analyze whatever information and data has been given. What are the tools and techniques they can use to analyze those data? About the information gathering. So one clue leads to another. So it is investigation. So it happens, you get one clue from when you see some information that would lead to another, or it would lead to another person, lead to another event. So that alertness has to be there. So the team member has to be trained to have that proactiveness or that kind of problem solving attitude, as well as alertness to find and read between the lines. That is very important in every investigation. Also, we said they have to be trained to respect laws around the investigation process, though it is not well defined. But as we gather from different legislation, we have to keep our data privacy, anti-corruption, discrimination, harassment, whistleblower, and all those compliances in mind while we are conducting investigation. Critical thinking of the team member is very important because it is not an ordinary thing. That is, like, investigation is about getting and digging into the information, and with the limited information which is given, to read into those information to come out with more. So critical thinking is very important. Apart from that, data management is also important, because at times we are dumped with information. So when when you're conducting, so people would give you a lot of information, so you would have to understand which information is important for your investigation, and to pick only those, because again you have to complete the investigation in a time bound manner. So data management and information is very important. Also, the team member has to be trained to preserve those data. So it is not that when you interviewed, you did not take a noting, or when you certain information came, you did not note that. So every step has to be noting, every step has to be every data, every piece of information has to be preserved, so that so if there is any link later on, that can be established and we can get to the right conclusion. The team investigating officer or the team also has to be trained to manage the cross-functional collaboration in a very effective manner, because at times, to keep neutrality of the investigation process, it would not be the investigation might not be given to the direct reportees or the managers. It is mostly given to the cross-functional team, so you have to speak and gather information from various teams and functions. And while you're speaking, it should be also that the data doesn't get leaked. So a person has a friend in another department, so when you go questioning about somebody in one department or one function, so that should not be leaked. So the investigating officer has to press upon the confidentiality which has to go in the process, and that would also come from the policy. So investigating policy which the organization outlined, so that would have been already ensured by the organization, but at the same time it has to be ensured by the investigation officer too. Then again, it is with the new technologies coming up, the new ways and methods coming up, so the team has to be trained with new techniques and processes and mechanisms to keep conducting the investigation. And after that, and once the team is trained, it is also important, and you have submitted report and you have concluded the evidence. It is also very important to preserve the documentation, so that, and also it is so if there is already a set formats or templates in which the information can be gathered, that would expedite the process of investigation. So it is not that if there are 5 members in the investigating team and everybody comes with a different format, and to collate that again becomes a task. So it is important that everything is a set template. Even the report writing has to be in a set template, so that whenever it is there is a uniformity is maintained. There has to be a centralized record management system. And also, when you are investigating, the team is investigating, the document versions has to be also, the trail of the document version has to be kept in mind. So there is one piece of information, again, you're updating that information. So you should not be wiping out the previous one. All the updates has to come in a sequential manner, so that if we have to refer to the earlier version, we can go back to it. Then indexing and proper categorization has to be there, so that I don't think so every the organizations have too many investigations to be taken up, but by year wise or something, where if we have to rely on a report of which was like 3 years back or 2 years back, we should know which report to refer to, and there should be a proper indexing process too, so that we are able to come to and find out the correct report on the incident. Then industry like practices, so the team should be also kept abreast of the industry practices which goes on, or how other organizations are conducting investigations. So those learning and to pick the best from other organization about the investigation has always to be taught and trained to the team.
I think it covered both of the questions really well. Like, firstly, how to train them, and what practices and systems they can adopt to improve the documentation once the investigation is done. So thank you so much for being part of this panel discussion. Thank you, Ranju and Jahnavi, for taking out time for us.
Thank you, Avani. Thank you, Ranju.